To my brothers and sisters and to non-believers, if you think Superman is real, this is even greater. This woman actually bilocated. She's also called the Flying Nun. And I'll just read a little bit about her. This blessed woman, she actually bilocated between in Spain in the around what they call the 17th century, from Spain into Texas, New Mexico area, and she basically evangelized to these I think they're called Jacinto Indians, and because she heard they needed to be evangelized in Spain, when they were doing mission work, United States at that time. And so she probably in her heart wanted to be involved. And so she probably asked God, the Father, to evangelize, and she gave her the ability to bilocate. And this was while so she'd be present in two places at one time. Her physical presence would stay in Spain, and her spiritual self would kind of be present in another location. It's very awesome. It's something that it's not, it's Superman's a joke. Satan likes to mock these things in Hollywood, but only the venerable and the saints that God gives the ability to humble can do such things. And God gives them that power. And she wrote, they call it the Venerable. The Catholic Church calls it Venerable. Venerable means honorable, respectful Mary. She was born to noble parents in Agreda, Spain. She was one of 11 children. She showed signs of grace, high degree of prayer, and bore a painful illness with great patience. At the age of 17, she entered the Franciscan convent of Poor Clares of the Immaculate Conception in Agreda as a novice, along with her mother and last surviving sister. At night, she would sleep for a few hours on board and spend the rest of the night in prayer and exercises of devotion. She would pray the way of the cross every night, carrying a heavy cross of her own. She was obedient to her superiors, no matter how disagreeable they were. In the Gospels, it says to serve all, to honor all. Even she was obedient, no matter how disagreeable they were, and was graced with such wisdom that prelates, bishops, even the King of Spain would ask her for advice. Between 1621 and 1631, she was aged 19 to 29 years old. Sister Mary of Agreda bilocated over 500 times. It would happen while she was praying. Her body remained in the cloistered convent, but at the same time she would find herself in the continent of North America, in the areas stretching East Texas, New Mexico, and western Arizona. She appeared to the Umano Indians and other tribes were flying through the sky and proceeded to teach them about the Catholic faith. This resulted in many occasions of being tortured and left for dead, but she would return to her body in Spain unharmed. Later, she would reappear to the same Indians, who were completely dumbfounded as to how she was still alive. Wow. They tried to hurt her? I didn't even know that. She was now the mother of Mary Agreda, specifically detailed all that would happen to her confessor, the places she had been to, the Indians she had seen, and all she experienced in teaching about God. Her confessor informed the superior general of the Franciscan order, who bade him to send a letter to Archbishop of Mexico City. Finally, in May 1628, suitably impressed, Archbishop sent a letter of inquiry to Father Fray Alonso de Benavides, his superior of the Franciscan Mission in New Mexico. The Archbishop wanted an investigation to whether any Indians knew about the Holy Catholic faith before the arrival of the missionaries and how it occurred. Basically, that's how they verified that this was all true, her accounts. The priest catechized and baptized everyone. So through her work, she led them to the church, to Jesus Christ. And here she is. It says this is her incorrupt for 400 years. There's a picture um, of her actually within her tomb. And she wrote this beautiful book, and she wrote, it's like 4 volumes. But the one I want to read today is a detailed account of the 12th chapter of the Apocalypse. Apocalypse, and this is originally written in Spanish. This is a translation in English. The book, if you read in the Spanish Bible, they call it Apocalypsis. Apocalypse. Revelation is the last book of the Bible about the end of, how Jesus comes back with the angels, basically, wins over the devil and raises the dead, judgment, etc. And but it's Revelation. It's really Apocalypse. So this is 12th chapter of the Apocalypse. Now, do I have the picture? Let's see if I have a picture. Okay. So this message was given to her supposedly by Virgin Mary. Appeared to her and gave her her account, her personal account, which she used with Jesus, of the Gospels, including Revelations, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and her life with Jesus. And in this one, I want to mention this one because Revelations 12 is translated by the church, interpreted the church. Remember, the Bible says, "Do not lean on your understanding." Well, if we don't understand anything, we can do 2 things. We can say, "Okay, I'll just make up whatever I think it is." That's one reason, but that's personal understanding, right? 2, you can lean on an understanding of the church, the Holy Church, which they're very educated. They have to go through usually 8 years of seminary school, and they translate the church, and then they bring that into each of the Catholic churches. They're the doctrine. They call it teachings of the church. This one, Revelations 12, is the coronation of Mary in heaven, and also in heaven above the angels. And basically it talks about how third stars of heaven will fall down. Those third stars, according to the church and according to this work, is the angels. So the stars in heaven are not physical stars. His tail drew the third of the stars. So let's read it together from Young's Literal Translation. "And a great sign was seen in heaven, a woman arrayed with the sun." So this woman is wearing the sun, bright. She's bright like the sun. "And the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And being with a child, she doth cry out." That child, supposedly Jesus. "Travailing in pain to bring forth. And then we're seeing another sign." So now you see a sign of her above the moon, and she has a crown upon 12 stars on over her head, and she's above the moon, and she's shining with sun, radiant. Now there's another sign. So he's looking at another vision. John is. "There's another sign in heaven, a great red dragon, having 7 heads, 10 horns, upon his head 7 diadems." Let me just tell you what already in advance. Red dragon is, of course, Satan. He cast his tail, draw the third of the stars of the heaven, and he cast them to the earth. And dragon did stand before the woman who's about to bring forth, that she may bring forth her child, he may devour. So he drove down the third of the stars. According to the book, according to the church, he brought down a third of the angels in heaven. They got casted down to earth. And he wanted to devour the child that would become king of him. "And she brought forth a male child, he's about to rule the nations. And the woman did flee to the wilderness, where she fled to Egypt, where she had a place made from God, that she may nourish 1,260. And then they warred. Michael and his messenger did war against the dragon, and did not prevail. And his messenger, and they did not prevail, nor was their place found in more heaven." So the dragon was cast forth. So who casted forth the angels out? It was Michael Angel. And I heard a voice say, now the salvation, power, and the reign of our God, the authority of his Christ, because cast down was the accuser of our brethren, who was accusing them before our God day and night. So basically, now Christ, what happened was this. What explains, you're like, why are there two visions? Well, according to this book, I'll read to you eventually, is that, and it makes sense. The angels were seeing the coronation before earth was created, before they were casted out to heaven, right? Because remember, when they were in earth was created, the Satan was there. Remember the Garden of Eden? Before they were in Garden of Eden, the angels saw the plan from God. It says, I'm going to create a son, and then I'm going to coronate Mary, or the mother I'm going to become incarnate in her. She was crowned the 12 virtues. The Satan did not like it. He was accusing, he wanted to become the chosen one to reign. He was jealous, according to this. He did not like the plan. He rebelled, and the others obeyed. The other ones, like Michael, they bowed down before God and his plan. And the ones that didn't agree were casted out to heaven. And then ever since then, he tried to war against all the women that could be considered virtuous, and that would have the King of Kings be born, because he knew that the king would be born of a virtuous virgin male. And so he was always looking for that, so he would thwart the plan so he can be King of Kings. So that's according to Revelation. So let's read here. So Mary is explaining to Mary Agreda what this 12th chapter means. So she quotes from the 12th chapter, and a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and on her head crown of 12 stars. And being with child, she cried, travailing in birth, and was in pain and delivered. And there were seen another sign in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his head 7 diadems. And his child did a third part of the stars of heaven before the woman was ready to be delivered, that she might. We already read that. Okay, and the woman fled to a dark wilderness. We read that. It prevailed not. We read that. So basically, it's a whole quote. It's in here. Okay. Such are the words of the evangelist, says Mary. He speaks in the past. Does he speak in the past? And a great sign was seen. Yes, he speaks in the past. A woman arrayed with the sun. So yeah, he speaks in the past. Because at that time was shown to him a vision of that which has already happened. And we logically explained that will happen. The angels were casted out. If they were in heaven, Satan was in heaven, and he was casted out by Michael Angel. Doesn't that mean that happened before the creation of time? Yeah. He says a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. This sign appeared really in the heavens by divine disposition, and was shown to the good and the bad angels. We saw that earlier. Michael was there, the 3 stars were there, Lucifer was there, dragon was there, Lucifer, in order that, seeing it, they might subject their wills to the pleasure and the commands of God. They saw it, therefore, before the good ones chose the good, and before the bad ones had turned to evil. It was as if it were a mirror of the wonderful perfection of the handiwork of God in creating human nature. Oh, and the bad ones did not like that. Imagine you're an angel created before humans, and you're like, huh? The bad ones are like, no. They're supposed to be above me? They couldn't stand it. They thought some of them thought they were so beautiful. Although he had already revealed this perfection to the angels in making known to them the mystery of the hypostatic union, yet he wished to reveal it to them also in a different manner, by showing it to them in a mere creature, meaning human, the most perfect and holy, which next to the humanity of our Lord, he was to create. It was also a sign for the assurance of the good angels and for confusion of the bad, since it manifested to them that in spite of the offense which was committed, God would not let the decree of creating man be unfulfilled, and that the incarnate Word and this woman, his mother, would please him infinitely more than the disobedient angels could ever displease him. This sign was also like the rainbow which appeared after the flood in the clouds of heaven, as a guarantee that even if men should sin like the angels and become disobedient, they were not to be punished like the angels without remission, but would be furnished with salutary medicine and remedied by this wonderful sign. It was as if God said to the angels, I will not chastise in my same way the other creatures which I call into my existence, because this woman whom I'm only gotten is to assume flesh belongs to that race. My son shall be the restorer of friendship and the pacifier of my justice. He shall open the way of the felicity which sin would close. In further testimony of this, after the punishment of disobedient angels, God made use of the sign in order to show his anger, which the pride of Lucifer had occasioned, was appeased and placated. And according to our way of understanding, he rejoiced in the presence of the queen, thus represented in that image. He gave the angels to understand that through Christ and his mother, he would now divert upon the grace which the apostates had lost through their rebellion. There was also another effect of that great sign among the good angels, namely that since they have been, as it were, made sorrowful, made unhappy, the Most High now wished to rejoice with them the sight of that image and to increase their essential beatitude by the accidental pleasure merited by their victory over Lucifer. Seeing this woman so full of clemency appearing to them as a sign of peace, they understood at once that the decree of punishment was not issued against them, since they obeyed the precepts of the Lord and his divine will. Much of the mysteries of the sacraments of the Incarnation, those of the church militant and its members, were made manifest to them in this sign. They understood also that they were to assist and help the human race by watching over men, by defending them against their enemies, and by leading them to eternal felicity. They saw that themselves would owe their felicity to the merits of the Incarnate Word and the Creator. Incarnate Word is Jesus, and that the Creator had preserved them in awesome grace through Jesus. The sun, which is mentioned as clothing the woman, is the true sun of justice. The angels were to understand it, but that the Most High was to remain with this woman by his grace in order to overshadow and defend her by the protection of the visible right hand. The moon was beneath her, for as the two planets, the sun and the moon, divide night and day, therefore the moon, being the symbol of darkness, of sin, is beneath her feet, and the sun, being the symbol of the light of grace, clothes her for all eternity. Thus, all the deficiency of grace in all mortals must be beneath her feet, and never must rise either to her soul or to her body, which on the contrary were to be ever superior to all angels and men. She alone was to be free from the darkness and the wanings of Lucifer and of Adam, treading them under foot without their being able to gain any advantage of her. And just as she rose above all the guilt and effects of original and of actual sin, God now placed these in a symbolic manner under her feet, in order that the good angels might know, and the bad ones might fear this woman even before she came into actual existence. So this says many things. That she's above the angels. She was born without sin. She's above the moon because the moon has darkness and it has light, but she's above it. She never has any sin in her. God is constantly putting divine protection on her, and she never diverts. The crown of 12 stars are evidently all the virtues which with the Queen of Heaven and Earth was to be adorned. Now, it doesn't say 12 tribes of Israel. It says 12 virtues. But the mystery of it being composed of 12 stars has reference to the 12 tribes of Israel, by which all the elect and the predestined are designated. And the 7, okay. And since the gifts of grace of all elect were to crown their queen in a most eminent exalted degree, a crown of 12 was placed around her head. Okay, and since the gifts and graces and virtue of all the elect were to crown their queen in a most eminent and exalted degree, a crown of 12 was placed around her head. And being with child, in the presence of all angels, for the rejoicing of the good and for the punishment of evil, who resisted divine will and fulfilling the mysteries, it became maintained that the three persons of the Blessed Trinity had selected this woman as their mother of the only begotten of the Father. And since the dignity of the mother of the world was the Word, was the principal beginning and foundation of all great excellence of this great mistress, and of this her symbol, she was to shown to the angels as being the resting place of the Holy Trinity, representative of the divine person of the Word incarnate. For on account of their inseparable union and coexistence, all three persons could not fail to be there, whether any one of them was present, although only the person of the Word assumed human flesh, and with him only she pregnant. She cried, travailing in birth, says Revelation 12, although this is to be hidden in the beginning of the order that it might be born humble, poor, and unknown. Yet afterwards the news of the birth was proclaimed so loudly that at first echoes excited King Herod and filled him. Some hearts were touched with fear, others moved to interior. The fruits of this chosen, and the pain, and was in pain to be delivered. It did not say this because she was to give birth in bodily pain, for this is not possible. This is interesting. For this queen could not know and did not know all beforehand by her knowledge of the Holy Scriptures. On account of the natural love of such a mother of a son, she must be deeply affected by their, although in subjection to the will of God. In this pain was also foreshadowed the sorrow of this most gentle mother at the thought of being deprived of the presence of her treasure after he should have issued from her virginal womb. Although her soul always enjoyed his presence, yet she was to be a long time without his bodily presence, according to which he was exclusively her son. The Most High had determined to exempt her from guilt, not from the labors and sorrows corresponding to the reward which was prepared for her. Thus, the sorrows of this birth were not the effect of sin, as were the descendants of Eve, but they were the effect of the intense and perfect love of the Most Holy Mother. And there was seen another sign, having a red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns. So basically, the sorrows was also she knew also her son would die on the cross, and also when he had to go out and do his mission work, she always wanted to be so close to him. She loved him so much, and so that hurt her soul because she had deep love for him. And they were seeing another sign in heaven, and behold, a red dragon having 7 diamonds. So he uttered, thereupon, following the punishment of Lucifer in his eye, he uttered blasphemies against this woman who had been symbolized in the heavenly sign. He found himself visibly and exteriorly transformed from a most beautiful angel to a fierce and most horrid dragon. He reared with fury his 7 heads that has led on the 7 legions or squadrons of all those that fought and fell with him. He commanded them to sin on their own account and undertaking leadership of the 7 mortal sins. So these are called the capital sins. So he's the leader. The 7 diadems are the 7 mortal sins, which are capital. For in these are contained the other sins that constitute as regiments that rise against God. They are called the sins that pride, even arrogance, luxury, intemperance, and sloth. They are called pride, envy, avarice. Look at that. Anger, luxury, intemperance, and sloth. Wow. If we have any of those, this is very wrong. They are the 7 diadems that Lucifer, after being changed into a dragon, was crowned with. This is the punishment which he was visited by Most High, and which was acquired for his return for his horrible wickedness for himself and for his confederate angels. To all of them were portioned the punishment and the pains which scourge brought to their mouth to share which they had originated in the 7 capital sins. The 10 horns were the triumphants of the iniquity and malice of the dragon, and the vain and arrogant glorification and exaltation which he attracted in the execution of his wickedness. In his depraved desire for attaining the object of his arrogance, he offered to the unhappy angels his malicious and poisonous friendship and his counterfeit principalities, commanderships, and rewards. These promises, full of bestial ignorance and error, were the tail which the dragon drew after him, the 3rd part of stars of heaven. These angels were the stars, and if they would have persevered, they would have shone with the rest of the angels and the just, like the sun through the perpetual eternities. But the punishment which they merited drew down to the earth of their inhabitant, into the very center, which is hell, where they will for all eternity be deprived of light and happiness. And he stood before the woman who was ready to believe. So it basically goes into more of this, but I just want to stop there. That if you want to get into details, read volume 1. If you want to read again, And the Catholic Church is in line with this teaching that she was Mary's called Immaculate Conception. She was born without sin, and it's also symbolically manifested through divine vision, not clearly stated, but this clearly states it, that she was symbolically means she was, the vision was given. She's translating it. Mary's translating it herself in here for into Mary Agreda in this book, City of God. But in Revelations 12, it is more like the message is kind of hidden and is open to. It was actually translated by the church. The church has taught that as dogma, that she was coronated. So people say, "Oh, where was she coronated in the Gospels?" Well, that's where they get it from. Okay, I'm just telling you, this is not so. And what was she? Everybody was with sin. No, according to our church, they don't. So if you lean on the church understanding, I promise you, you will not just assume this. I strongly believe this is more accurate than to be born with sin. It just makes more sense to me because of what Lucifer's done. Look what the demons do today with women, and what pornography does to women. They degrade all women. The Satan's always wants to degrade all women because they can't stand that the woman's overcome them. And look at all the sinners, like all the rape, and just no respect for the women as holy. Where's the holiness? The nuns, the virginity. Where's the virginity? What we all men should really, really strive to be celibate and anti-sexual as much as possible so they can be righteous with God. This is really, and to deny all earthly things, as Mary said. This is what we should do. And it's very hard. I'm having the struggle myself, but I'm giving up on luxuries. I want luxury things, but I'm giving up on a lot of things because they don't give me happiness. God is our happiness. Now, remember, Mary is not, to be clear, Jesus is the king, and King of Kings. He's God incarnate in him. He's numero uno, but we should remember, not only honor Mary, deeply honor, just as Jesus honored her, submitted to her. And remember, in the wedding in Cana, she said, they have no wine. And she commanded Jesus. Jesus obeyed. So even Jesus obeyed her. And then this book is full of Mary. If you want to get close to Mary and the Holy Rosary, anybody who does the Holy Rosary, I advise reading this book. It really cements the faith, not only the Catholic faith. It even talks about the priests and the Eucharist. It really explains it all without going to the Catechism book. And the words and the advice and the details about the Gospels have really changed my life. And I'm doing a second reading, actually. And this book is like, 1,000. This is just right, 650 pages right here. And so there's like 4 books. So imagine, I think like 2,000 pages or something. It's very lengthy. But nevertheless, I would say, don't waste your time on comic books. Don't waste your time on Hollywood entertainment fiction. That's just waste time. There's a lot of things to do if you want to be close to God and you want to live like if you want to be wealthy in heaven, this is what you got to do. If you want to be poor in heaven, don't do it. If you want to be rich on earth, don't do any of this. It's easy to be rich on earth, but we're not called. Remember the 7 capitals. Avarice, greed is coming from Satan. He tempts you to want things in this earth which are not everlasting. God is everlasting. And he teaches don't be lazy, work for others, think about others, be selfless. And this world teaches us to love ourselves. No. You love God. You appreciate yourself, that you have a soul and a life because of God. But you don't love yourself more than others. That's impossible. Because if this world if only you exist, it's a very, very lonely world and very unamusing. So, honor is so important to call Mary blessed. Of course, love God, adore Christ. He's the King of Kings. Without him, without God, none of this would happen. And it's all God's plan. This is the core of the plan. We're just living it out. It's like, really, it's only about us being denied, like, our judgment is how much did he say no to this and how much good did he do? And did this person change his heart? Did this person die without sin? Did he go through penance? Did he get baptized? All these things happen in Judgment Day. And so we have to be prepared for every question and be holy for the Lord, no guilt. And it's very important that you go to confess in your own prayers every day for little things, venial sins, mortal sins, and go to a priest. And the Bible says, confess your sins to others and ask for forgiveness. So I'm going to leave it at that. God bless you, and let's open our hearts to all the people. Let's try to identify with these people in the Bible. Like, what would Mary be like? What would John be like? Saint John, John the Baptist, Moses, Isaiah, Abraham. These people are to identify our lives with. But we're unique. Mary Agreda was unique. Each person is like a divine. There's a divine perfection in everybody. Each one's a snowflake. All right, and peace out, and may God, Jesus, and Holy Mary may pray for us that we may overcome the snares of the devil.